Picture your morning. You wake up, check your phone, get dressed, sit in traffic, wait in line, and deal with the usual friction. Now picture a different one. You wake up in a home built around your preferences, the temperature, the light, the layout. A doctor calls to confirm your annual blood work is scheduled at your convenience at a private clinic with no waiting room. A car is already outside. A flight leaves from a private terminal where no one checks your shoes. By the time most people clear airport security, you are already at cruising altitude. This is not a fantasy sequence. This is the actual daily life of people worth $100 million or more. And the most interesting thing about it is not simply that it is luxurious. It is structurally different, built on a separate set of systems, services, and markets that most people never interact with. The question is not just what the ultra-wealthy spend their money on. It is what they are actually buying. Because when you look closely at where the money goes, a pattern emerges. They are not just consuming more of the same things everyone else consumes. They are substituting the shared world for a private one, paying to exit the ordinary systems of life and replace each one with a custom, controlled, exclusive version. Healthcare, transportation, housing, security, even status. Every category has a public version and a private version, and above a certain level of wealth, you buy the private version of all of them. That is what this video is about. Not the price tags in isolation, but the economic logic underneath them. Why does this parallel world exist? How does it function? What does it cost to maintain? And what does it tell us about how money at extreme scale stops being a resource and starts being an architecture? To understand what ultra wealth actually buys, you first need to understand what everyone else is working with. Economists use a concept called the foundational economy. It describes the infrastructure of everyday life, all the essential services and systems that people depend on just to function. Roads, public transit, emergency rooms, grocery stores, schools, utilities, insurance systems. These are the shared platforms of ordinary existence. Most people navigate them constantly, often without thinking. You use a hospital when you're sick. You drive on public roads. You board commercial flights when you travel. You live in neighborhoods that are, at minimum, theoretically accessible to others. The foundational economy is not glamorous, but it is load-bearing. It is the substrate underneath every ordinary life. And here is the key economic insight. When wealth reaches a certain scale, money becomes capable of buying an exit from that substrate. Not a better position within the shared system, an actual departure from it. This is the substitution effect at the extreme end of wealth. Economists define substitution as the replacement of one good or service with another that performs the same function. At the ultra-wealthy level, the substitution is comprehensive. Public hospital becomes private medical team. Commercial airline becomes private aircraft. Public road through a neighborhood becomes a gated compound with its own internal infrastructure. The function is the same: health, travel, shelter, but the delivery system is entirely different. And that difference is the point. It is not incidental. It is the purchase. The ultra-wealthy are not buying nicer versions of ordinary things. They are buying control over the conditions of their own lives, reliability, privacy, speed, and the elimination of dependence on systems they cannot control. Once you see it that way, the spending patterns start to make sense not as indulgence, but as a coherent economic strategy. You are outsourcing risk. You are buying redundancy. You are purchasing certainty in a world where certainty is normally unavailable. Hey, it's CJ, the creator of this channel. If you want to make automated videos like this, topic2video.com will do it all for you. You don't need a camera, script, or microphone. All you need is an idea. The visuals, voiceover, and script are all generated autonomously. Try it free today at topic2video.com. Back to the video. Before going further into how this parallel world works, it helps to understand just how small and how economically powerful this group actually is. According to research from WealthX and UBS, the global ultra-high net worth population, people with assets of $30 million or more, has reached roughly 211,275 individuals worldwide. To put that in perspective, that is smaller than the population of Rochester, New York. It is a fraction of the global population of 8 billion. And yet, those 211,275 people collectively hold nearly $30 trillion in net worth. $30 trillion. That is a number that requires a moment. The entire annual economic output of the United States is around $27 trillion. This group of people, fewer in number than fill a mid-sized American city, holds combined wealth that exceeds the GDP of the largest economy on Earth. And they spend accordingly. Ultra-high net worth individuals account for roughly 19% of all global luxury spending. That means a group representing a statistically invisible slice of the world's population drives nearly $1 in 5 across the entire luxury market. Private jets, art, fashion houses, super yachts, rare wine, bespoke architecture, exclusive hospitality. The numbers confirm something the intuition already suspects. This is not a niche within the consumer economy. It is its own economy, operating in parallel, with its own logic and its own price levels. At the threshold we are talking about $100 million and above, the spending is not really about acquisition in the way most people understand it. It is about maintenance, the maintenance of a lifestyle that has its own operating costs, its own staffing requirements, its own asset management needs. The wealth creates a world, and then that world has to be continuously run. Start with health, because health is where the stakes are most visceral and the substitution is most complete. In the ordinary healthcare system, even a good one, access is mediated by scarcity. There are not enough doctors for everyone who needs one immediately. Specialists book weeks or months out. Emergency rooms are triaged by severity, not by preference. You wait. Even in the best commercial insurance plans, the experience involves friction, paperwork, referrals, scheduling queues, rushed appointments measured in 10-minute increments. Concierge medicine is the first step in the substitution. At the basic end, concierge practices charge a retainer, typically between $1,500 and $10,000 a year per patient, in exchange for same-day or next-day access, longer appointments, and a doctor who actually knows your name, your history, and your life. That is the entry tier. At the ultra-wealthy level, the model becomes something categorically different. Personal physicians are on retainer, not at a clinic, but available directly. Some are employed full-time. The wealthiest individuals retain not a single doctor, but a coordinated medical team. A primary physician, specialists on call, a nutritionist, a physical therapist, and in some cases, a dedicated medical director who coordinates all of it. Annual executive health screenings at institutions like the Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic cost $4,000 to $10,000 for a single comprehensive evaluation. That is the routine checkup at this level. The logic is not vanity, it is risk management. A person managing a billion-dollar business or investment portfolio cannot afford the health unpredictability that is simply normal for most people. A cardiac event with no early warning. A diagnosis that arrives 18 months later than it should have because a specialist was unavailable. At this level, health is treated the way critical infrastructure is treated, with redundancy, monitoring, and immediate response capability built in. Beyond routine care, ultra-wealthy individuals access experimental treatments, cutting-edge longevity protocols, and clinical trials unavailable to the general public, sometimes by funding the research themselves. The line between patient and patron blurs. The cost of comprehensive private healthcare at this level runs easily into the hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, and for those deeply invested in longevity, into the millions. Time is the resource that money most reliably converts into. Nowhere is that conversion more literal than in private aviation. Commercial air travel, even in first class, is a managed inconvenience. You arrive when the airline says to arrive. You go through security with hundreds of other people. You board according to a group number. You land at whichever major hub the route serves, then connect. The airport is a public system designed for mass throughput, not individual preference. Private aviation exits that system entirely. A private jet departs on your schedule from a private terminal called a fixed base operator, an FBO, that looks more like a boutique hotel lobby than an airport gate. There is no security line in the conventional sense. Departure takes minutes, not hours. The aircraft lands at whichever airport is most convenient for the destination, often a smaller regional airport much closer to the actual endpoint. For a person conducting business across multiple time zones, the time saved is not marginal, it is structural. The economics of private aviation have their own tiered structure. At the entry point, jet card programs sell blocks of flight hours. A mid-sized jet card runs roughly $5,000 to $10,000 per flight hour, depending on the aircraft category and market conditions. For moderate users, fractional ownership, purchasing a share in a specific aircraft, is more economical. Full aircraft ownership begins around $3 million for a light jet and runs past $70 million for a long-range, large-cabin aircraft like a Gulfstream G700. But the purchase price is only the beginning. Operating a private aircraft adds pilots, crew, fuel, maintenance, hangar fees, insurance, and scheduling staff. The annual operating cost of a large cabin private jet runs between $3 and $5 million per year, not counting the capital cost of the aircraft itself. A person who owns multiple aircraft, which many in the top tier do, is running what amounts to a small private airline as a cost of living. Why do people pay it? Not primarily for the leather seats or the catering, though those are real. They pay it because the alternative is giving up control over one of the most time-sensitive aspects of their life. Every hour spent navigating a commercial airport is an hour not spent on anything else. At this level, time has a quantifiable cost, and private aviation is the invoice for buying it back. There is a particular irony about extreme wealth in security. The more wealth a person accumulates, the more visible and therefore the more vulnerable they become. Fame compounds this. A billionaire whose name appears regularly in the press, whose company decisions move markets, whose home address is publicly traceable, faces a threat profile that is genuinely different from that of an ordinary citizen. Personal security at the ultra-wealthy level is not a bodyguard at a nightclub. It is a managed system. At the foundation is a close protection detail, trained security professionals who maintain physical proximity during public movements. These are often former military or intelligence personnel. The annual cost of a full-time close protection team for a high-profile individual runs from $500,000 to over $2 million per year, depending on team size and travel requirements. Beyond personal protection, residential security becomes its own infrastructure project. Perimeter systems, surveillance networks with redundant monitoring, reinforced entry points, safe rooms engineered to commercial specifications. Properties at this level are often designed from the ground up with security architecture integrated, not added on afterward. The estate is not just a home, it is a controlled environment with its own access protocols. Digital security adds another layer. At the ultra-wealthy level, the risk of targeted cyber intrusion, hacking personal communications, compromising financial accounts, conducting surveillance through connected devices is real enough to warrant dedicated cybersecurity staff or contracted specialists. Information that would be meaningless about most people becomes enormously valuable when it concerns someone managing hundreds of millions in assets. There is also the more abstract dimension of privacy as security. Ultra-wealthy individuals increasingly structure their lives to reduce exposure, using holding companies and trusts to obscure property ownership, routing travel through private terminals that do not generate public records, limiting digital footprints. The goal is not paranoia. It is to make themselves a more difficult target, to reduce the surface area of vulnerability that comes with being known to be wealthy. All of this costs money that disappears into operations and never generates a return. It is pure cost, the overhead of existing at this level. At the ultra-wealthy level, housing is not really a category of shelter. It is a category of controlled environment. The distinction matters because the economics of housing change completely when you are spending at this scale. For most people, a home is the largest asset they own, and the primary goal is appreciation, buying something that will be worth more later. For someone with $100 million or more, a primary residence, several secondary residences, and a collection of properties across multiple cities and countries is a normal configuration. The properties serve different functions. One for primary operations, one for privacy, one near family, one positioned for a specific climate or regulatory environment. At the top end of the residential market, properties priced above $10 million, the purchase price is only one component of what the home actually costs. These estates require staff. A large primary residence might employ a full-time household manager, a chef, housekeeping staff, groundskeepers, a security team, a caretaker when the owners are traveling. Staffing costs for a major estate easily run $500,000 to over $1 million annually, separate from the property itself. Custom homes at this level are often built rather than bought. An architect is commissioned. Every system, climate control, acoustics, lighting, kitchen infrastructure, the integration of security with aesthetics is designed to specification. Custom residential construction at this level routinely runs $1,000 to $3,000 per square foot and sometimes higher for exceptional finishes or locations. A 15,000 square foot custom estate easily reaches $30 to $45 million in construction cost alone before land. Maintenance is ongoing and expensive. Historic properties require specialist restoration. Modern smart home systems require dedicated technical support. Properties in climates with extreme weather require seasonal preparation. Insurance for ultra-high-value residential properties requires specialized coverage with premiums that scale with the asset value and the risk profile of the location. Then there are the secondary residences, the ski property, the beach house, the pied-à-terre in a major city. Each one carries its own carrying costs. Property taxes, maintenance staff, insurance, utilities, whether occupied or not. A portfolio of 4 or 5 high-value properties can generate combined carrying costs of several $1,000,000 annually, simply to keep them operational and ready. There is a category of ultra-wealthy spending that does not map neatly onto function. It does not buy better health, faster travel, or more secure shelter. It buys something more abstract but no less real within the social world of extreme wealth. Distinction, status at this level behaves like a market. And like any market, it has scarcity, signaling, and escalation. The scarcity is engineered. Luxury goods derive their economic power not from their materials alone, but from their artificial rarity. A watchmaker that produces only a few hundred timepieces per year is not doing so because of production limitations. The constraint is intentional. The waiting list is the product. The exclusion is the point. The same logic applies to rare wines, invitation-only residences, private club memberships with decades-long queues, and the small number of true couture fashion clients served each season. What money buys in this market is access, and access is worth more the harder it is to obtain. The signaling dimension works alongside scarcity. Conspicuous consumption, which the economist Thorstein Veblen identified over a century ago, is the use of spending to communicate social position. At ordinary wealth levels, this plays out through recognizable brands. At ultra-wealthy levels, it inverts. The most powerful status signal is often the absence of a visible price tag, the object whose value is only legible to others who operate at the same level. The escalation dynamic follows logically. When enough people at a given wealth tier can access a formerly exclusive item, that item loses its signaling power and a new tier of exclusivity emerges. This is why luxury goods companies constantly develop ultra-premium lines above their already premium lines. Those 211,275 ultra-high net worth individuals driving 19% of global luxury spending are not simply buying things they enjoy. They are participating in a competitive social market where the currency is scarcity, the price floor rises continuously, and opting out carries its own costs within the networks they inhabit. There is a dimension of ultra-wealthy life that almost never appears in the aspirational imagery, the sheer operational complexity of maintaining it. A fortune of $100 million or more is not a savings account. It is a living financial organism, a portfolio of assets that requires constant active management. It is invested across multiple asset classes: public equities, private equity, real estate, hedge funds, venture capital, bonds, art, collectibles, and in many cases, direct business ownership. Each of these positions has its own risk profile, tax treatment, liquidity characteristics, and management demands. To oversee this, the ultra-wealthy rely on what are called family offices. A family office is essentially a private financial institution that exists for a single family or individual. At its core, it employs investment professionals, tax attorneys, estate planning specialists, accountants, and often a chief financial officer or chief investment officer with institutional level credentials. Running a full family office costs between $1 and $3 million annually at a minimum. At the large end, for fortunes in the billions, the family office is a genuine organization with dozens of employees and an operating budget to match. The preservation problem is real. Across long time horizons, wealth faces relentless pressure. Inflation erodes purchasing power. Tax obligations, income taxes, capital gains taxes, estate taxes are a continuous drain. Lifestyle spending runs into the millions annually just for the basic operating costs of the private world. A fortune of $100 million generating a 6% annual return produces around $6 million per year in gross return before taxes. After taxes and operating costs, the aircraft, the estate staff, the security, the family office, a significant portion of that return is consumed by the cost of living the life it is supposed to fund. This is the constraint that most coverage of ultra-wealth ignores. The private world is expensive to run. Wealth at this level does not sit passively in a vault, generating effortless abundance. It requires active, skilled management to prevent erosion, and the management itself costs money. The long-run problem of ultra-wealth is not how to spend it. It is how to preserve it across decades, generations, and the unpredictable turbulence of markets, policy, and time. At some point in the life cycle of extreme wealth, the economic question changes. It moves from how do I grow this to what does this mean? Philanthropy is not a sidebar to the economics of ultra-wealth. It is a central chapter, one that involves billions of dollars, complex institutional structures, powerful social incentives, and genuine questions about what money can accomplish when it is deployed at scale with long-time horizons. The Giving Pledge is the most visible institutionalization of this shift. Launched in 2010 by Warren Buffett and Bill and Melinda Gates, the Giving Pledge is a public commitment by the ultra-wealthy to donate the majority of their wealth to philanthropic causes during their lifetimes or through their estates. Over 200 of the world's wealthiest individuals and families have signed it, committing collectively to trillions of dollars in eventual giving. The economics of large-scale philanthropy are not simple. Charitable foundations must be structured, staffed, and governed. The Gates Foundation, to take the most prominent example, operates with an endowment in the tens of billions and a professional staff comparable to a mid-sized corporation. Grant-making at scale requires due diligence, program officers, evaluation systems, and long-run strategic planning. The foundation itself has operating costs just like any institution. Tax incentives shape the philanthropy market. Charitable contributions to qualifying foundations reduce taxable income. Donating appreciated assets, stock, real estate, allows the giver to avoid capital gains taxes while taking a charitable deduction at the full market value. For someone with a concentrated position in a highly appreciated asset, philanthropic vehicles can be one of the most tax-efficient wealth transfer mechanisms available. There is also the legacy dimension. For many ultra-wealthy individuals, philanthropy is how wealth is converted into something more enduring than money. Reputation, institutions, influence over the direction of research or public policy, and a version of the self that outlasts the fortune. These are not simply acts of generosity. They are the last major economic decisions of a life organized around the accumulation and direction of capital, and they are often the most consequential. The private world, in its final form, is not just a set of services and residences and aircraft. It is a constructed meaning, an attempt to make the wealth add up to something that justifies its own scale. When you add it up, not the sticker prices, but the total cost of living inside the parallel world that ultra-wealth makes possible, the number is both staggering and clarifying. A fully realized, ultra-wealthy life at the $100 to $300 million level might carry annual operating costs of $5 to $15 million. Private aviation alone, owning or chartering regularly, easily accounts for $2 to $5 million. Estate management and staff, another $1 million to $2 million. Security, another $500,000 to $2 million. Healthcare and wellness, several $100,000 to $1 million. Family office management, another $1 million or more. And then the ongoing costs of status markets, the art acquisitions, the luxury goods, the memberships, the hospitality layered on top. At the billionaire tier, these costs scale proportionally. The aircraft gets larger. There are more of them. The estate portfolio grows. The family office becomes a full institution. The philanthropy becomes a program. The total annual cost of operating the private world can reach $30, $40, $50 million per year, which means the fortune must generate returns not just above inflation, but well above the cost of the lifestyle itself, or it begins to erode. This is the economic reality that sits beneath the imagery. Ultra wealth is not a destination state where money stops being a problem. It is an operating condition that generates its own demands, its own management requirements, its own vulnerabilities, and its own logic. The private world is real. Its price is real. And the work of sustaining it never fully stops. Alfred Marshall, who wrote one of the foundational texts of modern economics in 1890, defined the field simply: economics is the study of man in the ordinary business of life. The ultra-wealthy are doing a version of that ordinary business, managing health, transportation, shelter, security, belonging, and meaning. The version they are doing just happens to cost more than most cities spend in a year. And it requires a private economy running in parallel to the one everyone else shares to deliver it. The question that remains is whether the private world, built piece by piece with extraordinary resources and extraordinary discipline, ever actually delivers what it promises. And it is not a moralizing one, just an honest one. More certainty, more control, more durability. The people who build it clearly believe it does. The economics suggest that it mostly works until it doesn't. Until a market turns, a health crisis arrives that no amount of money can fully redirect, a family fractures, or a legacy fails to outlast the fortune. The private world is formidable, but it is still, in the end, a human construction. And every human construction has a maintenance bill. If you found this breakdown genuinely useful, subscribing helps us keep making videos like it, and it means the next one finds you automatically. Hey, it's CJ. Before you go, I want to tell you something personal. I worked really hard to try to make money on YouTube, and I finally found a way. This video right here was made with a tool I created called topic2video.com. I made all of the videos on this channel with this tool. It creates long-form YouTube videos from just a topic or idea. I want to help people drive traffic to their business with faceless YouTube videos. If you're serious about building a business with YouTube, I want you to try my software. Your first video is free. Go to topic2video.com and try it now. I'll see you in the next one.